So this is Friday, February 25th at 2:00 p.m. and we're on the KW Marco Island in Naples Luxury Mastermind. Thank you for those that have joined us. Happy to have you here. Hopefully others will be joining us shortly. These calls we actually started in January. I believe this is now our fourth call, and we're happy to have you here. This will last till 2:00. And the idea behind this is to be a mastermind and not someone who's teaching or lecturing to you. So your participation is encouraged and welcome. We'd like to hear from as many as possible. If you have a question and you know how to use your digital hand, if you scroll down on your phone or on your mouse to reactions, you can raise your hand. I also encourage you to type questions that you have or comments in the chat box, so that we can refer back to this. This is recorded, so you and anyone else can watch it later on. Again, it is meant to be a benefit to everybody who's in both market centers. We've talked about a number of topics, and today I thought perhaps what we might benefit from is a conversation about the things that we learned at Family Reunion, and specifically how they might apply to the luxury business here in Southwest Florida. How many of you, either by coming on screen or raising your digital hand, how many of you attended Family Reunion, or you could just unmute and say so?
Attended.
Jeff Jones.
Attended. Virtually.
Michelle was there. Anybody else?
I did it virtually. I watched.
Gary watched it virtual. Okay. Anybody else watch it virtually? Kathy raised her hand. Great. So welcome back. Wait just a second. Hi, Amanda. Welcome back, Becky. We're beginning the conversation about the things that we heard at Family Reunion. And Cindy, you were at Family Reunion, correct? Saw you there. You're unmuted, Cindy. You can say hello. All right. For those of you that were at Family Reunion, I'm going to encourage you to share anything that you heard that might benefit the rest of the people that were there, or perhaps you were in a session or at a table where the rest of us were not. So I'll begin with Gary Keller's vision speech and state of the company. And he pointed out, and you can watch this in the recordings of the sessions, that this was the second best year in real estate based on numbers from various economic sources, including the National Association of Realtors, that there were 6.1 million units sold. And then when you take into account that is double that for the number of sides, so over 12 million sides took place. We have had, and Jeff, maybe you can comment on this, we've had within AR about 12 million or more agents. So if you simply just divided the 12 million sides into 12 million agents, that would be an average of one side per agent. And we know the 80-20 principle, that probably 20% of the business is done by 80%. And I think in our market, maybe it's, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Jeff, I'm going to guess about 95% of the business is done by about 5% of the agents.
I think 95 and 5 is good. NAR's, I think I thought they were at 1.6 million agents. So I'm just reviewing your math.
Yeah, so that's even less sides per agent.
Right.
So, even in our own marketplace, we recognize that there are many people who are licensed, many people who are members of the MLS or the boards, and yet they may do zero transactions, because if 5% of the business, 5% of the agents are doing 95% of the business, that means there are many people who are not doing any. And yet, and I'm not getting political or anything, it's just the cost of entry and the cost of maintaining a license is, comparatively speaking to other professions, quite low. And so it's very easy for people to keep their license and do a transaction every couple of years. he said the fundamentals of our economy and in the market are significantly different than 2006. That we're seeing maybe across the board a 9% increase. And this is the lowest inventory on record. That, but yet still people are going to buy and sell real estate even at today, even if mortgage interest rates go higher. And I'm sure it's probably very similar in Marco Island. Historically in Naples, it's about 2/3 of buyers pay cash. However, maybe in recent years with the lower interest rates, tax accountants and advisors have advised their clients to take advantage of that and take a mortgage. Inflation has been under control until just recently. And the things that Gary mentioned that could impact the real estate market the most, it would be world events. And so we've seen with the invasion of Russia into Ukraine that that's an unsettling thing in the economy. And yet I was having a conversation with this morning and recalling back to prior times. I've been in real estate for 26 years. And in prior world times, in points of concern, consumers actually flocked to the US to buy US real estate because they felt it was more secure and more stable. So that doesn't necessarily mean that prices are going to go down or that sales are going to slow. It could, but we've seen instances in the past where it was quite the opposite. Affordability becomes a big issue. And so in recent times, 16% of some household buyers' income went to their cost of living in housing, and that the long-term average is about 20%. So where we see the difficulty especially is for people who are first-time home buyers or younger people who have college debt. Talked about gross domestic product was up significantly, and that there's a labor shortage, particularly in leisure and hospitality. He mentioned that the consumer price index and inflation was, they were looking at a 7% figure for the current year, and that the number one threat to democracy is inflation. 65.5% of Americans own their own home, and the highest level of home ownership was in the mid-2000s when it was around 69%. Here's a number that if you didn't pick up on it, I'm using in conversations right now. He said, and I've heard this on the media recently, that we are underbuilt by 2.5 million homes. And that was since 2008. So he said at the current rate of construction of new homes, it would take 18 years to fill that deficit. And so the takeaway from that is if you have an opportunity to work with builders and developers and your clients are interested in buying land, his t-shirt said buy dirt, because the demand for housing and for land to build housing is going to continue for the foreseeable future. So show them the benefits of building real homes of real estate. The other conversation was around student debt and the higher cost of higher education. So those have been a drag on the first-time home buyers, and that's the sector that has been hardest hit by this current market. And I recall that in prior economic times, when younger people are not able to get into the housing market, the people who came in before them have more difficulty selling their homes in a typical market. Therefore, they can't move up into the next bracket. Those people can't move up into the next bracket, et cetera. I'm not sure we're in that kind of situation right at the moment, but I think there are a lot of people that are still living with their parents, younger people, or doubling up, sharing homes to pay off their student debt and to get enough cash down. And now that prices are going up and interest rates are going up, they're finding it more difficult. 2% of all US households are millionaires. and 15% is in their asset classification. So Rocket Mortgage said did 9% of all new loans. And another company to watch is CoStar. They own homes.com and homesnap.com, and they have twice the value of Zillow. So they're a major player. The key is to people are looking for larger homes. They're looking for it to be closer to family, and they're looking for better areas. So the key is for you to stay top of mind with consumers. The average home buyer is in the home search process for about 6 weeks. 41%, their first step is to begin looking online, followed by 17% connected with a real estate agent. So there may be combinations thereof.
Hey, Mark,
Yes, go right ahead.
what two did you just say were competing with Zillow, Homestar, and what?
Rocket Mortgage did 9% of all home loans. And so they're a player, and they're getting into the real estate business, looking at selling homes directly to consumers, as well as a company, a conglomerate called CoStar, COSTAR. They own homes.com and HomeSnap and others. You can look them up online.
Okay.
2% of buyers nationally visited an open house first. So I think our area the percentage might be higher than that. And then 41% of them got information about a home that they bought from an open house. That when it comes to choosing a realtor, 47% were referred by a friend or a neighbor or a relative. 13% were a repeat customer. So 60% of the people were either referred by someone or they were a repeat customer. So again, the have-mets become an important thing versus the unmet or haven't met people. 73% of them interviewed one agent before they chose who they worked with. So the key words that he used there was speed to lead. Is oftentimes consumers have more than one choice, and they're going to, if you don't get back to them quickly, they move on to the next person who will. 90% of consumers would use the same agent again if they had a second transaction, and yet only about 13% of them actually do. So it's incumbent upon us to stay in communication with them. So you need to foster relationships with people every day. 82% hired the first agent they interviewed. 32% said reputation was the most important factor. And I believe, Jeff, you can confirm this. I believe this comes from the NAR home study, annual study of home buyers or home sellers.
Yeah, they do an annual study, which is really good stuff. It's, especially a lot of the data in there is great to share with your buyers and sellers because it represents the current state of real estate, and it's a great report. You can get it on nar.realtor.
Yeah, but by all means, order that report. It's not expensive, and it'd be a good investment for you. And you can pull data from that and use it in social media and quote it, et cetera. 19% of buyers and sellers are looking, the most important characteristic is they're looking for somebody that's trustworthy. 47% of the agents initiated a conversation around compensation. So they didn't wait for the consumer to raise the question. They initiated it, and they took charge and took control of that. My takeaway was set up as soon as possible a Zoom call in addition to a phone call with them, and go over various aspects of either your search or your marketing plan or your sales contracts, so that you engage with them. Thank you for posting that. So there's a chart on inflation. You want to comment on that?
I just brought that up while you were talking. I thought it was one of the best slides in the whole presentation.
Right.
And something that I think is great to share with your customers because, everybody's looking at the rising home prices and looking at the overall inflation problems. And, you know, one of the things that's very interesting is if you take a look, like these are numbers that are adjusted for real inflation from 1989. So look at a car in 1989 was 15,350. Today, 46,404, and adjusted for inflation, that same car is worth 35,000. Go across to gas, of course, 97 cents in 1989, adjusted for inflation and numbers, 225 today. Home prices, adjusted for inflation, from 94,000 to 218, and of course, wages have gone up 13% in that time. But the most striking statistic here is mortgages. A mortgage in today's market is over 24% less costly than in 1989. So what this is saying is that the cost of money and the cost of buying a home is less than it was adjusted for inflation. So if you really think about it, people don't buy a mortgage. When they buy a home, they buy a monthly payment. And so if you take a look at the fact that monthly payments are adjusted for inflation lower than they were, that's pretty interesting stat. Might be give people a little different perspective on the market, because we're seeing rising median prices. But in last month over month in Naples, sales were down 30%. So obviously, if you take a look at the mix of product, the median is going up on a smaller number of sales. So sometimes these stats don't tell the truth, but I thought this was an interesting chart. And these charts should become available on KW.
Week.
Pardon?
I think with this week, they're supposed to be available to us.
So I urge you to go through some of these charts. There's a few others, but there's some really good stuff that you can share with your customers. That's all I have.
Thanks, Jeff. So there were a number of things we're going to try and cover within this hour. On the exhibit hall floor, one of the things that I oftentimes look for is something that's new or different. Jim, maybe you saw some things that were there. I noticed that Matterport was selling a device that mounts to a tripod that you can mount your cell phone and do Matterport tours without buying the $3,000 camera. I don't know that necessarily that is something that I would do on a luxury property. I think I would still hire the specialist, but if you had a buyer that wanted you to go and do a walkthrough tour of a home, that might be something to consider if the listing agent hasn't done a Matterport tour, or they left some areas out. So for an investment, I think it was show special was $59 for the camera mount. It might be something to spend a little money on. Jim, did you see?
Make sure you get permission if you go to a showing, and
right. Good point.
You're going to do that, because you really don't have. I mean, it's generally not somebody who's going to say no, but if you go in there and take a bunch of pictures and use them, then you could possibly put yourself in a bad spot. Absolutely.
And there again is sometimes there's not a video tour of a clubhouse or the tennis court area, that sort of thing. So that might be something for a nominal investment. Jim or Cindy or Becky, did you see anything that you wanted to share at this point before I continue?
I can take that. Basically, what I saw when I was walking the show floor that was most interesting to me was all the new avenues that KW Corporate is taking. One area, with my 28 years as a developer in Connecticut, I'm very excited about getting the designation for new homes consultant, and I think that's a great thing. But there was many other tools that are going to be rolled out in the coming weeks and months that I think were really exciting.
Thank you. Anyone else want to throw something in? So of those of you that went, did you go to the Luxury Mastermind on Monday. I think it was from 11 to 1. So if you had some takeaways from that, be prepared to share those if you'd like to with the rest of us. I made a few notes. One of them was, where is it here? Bob Lucido, who is perhaps Keller Williams still maybe #1 real estate agent in the world, or he's always up at the top, said, your meeting with the seller is a listening conversation and consultation. And so he said, ask the seller or ask the buyer, if it's on the buyer's side, paint the picture of your perfect real estate agent. And then he said, listen, and then see how you can match what they say. So instead of selling and telling and say, this is all the things I do, etc., is ask them what would be, like on a scale of 1 to 10, what would be the perfect real estate agent. Now you're not promising that you're going to be perfect or that everything is going to be a 10, but you want to try to elicit from them. So if they say quick communication or documentation or speed of transaction or staging or whatever it happens to be, you want to key in on that and keep bringing those things back up to them. Then another agent talked about when a consumer gives you an online review or a testimonial or responds in writing to something, is it use the words that you commonly see in those references, those testimonials, that sort of thing, and continue to use that in your marketing. So if someone says you're trustworthy or you're diligent or you're a good negotiator, and you keep getting those comments in your reviews, that's the kind of thing that you want to key on. That's what people are branding you or knowing you for and think you're great at. So build on your strengths and keep repeating those things through your marketing and your branding. Let's see.
Mark, can I add something to that? At our table, there was a young lady that has a very successful brokerage from New York City. And along that line, what she offered to us was that when she was rebranding, she got this idea from former companies that she had worked with. But those clients that are your favorite clients and who absolutely love you as an agent, she would question them as to what about me do you like? And what would, what's your idea of the perfect real estate agent? And she said, essentially, she would take all these comments from her favorite clients that she desires to work with, everyone like them, and built herself an avatar, if you will, of that perfect agent, and then incorporated all those qualities into all her branding and marketing materials with which to, end goal being to attract more clients like those favorite clients of hers. And I thought that was brilliant, a good move. And I'm going to try to do that in my own marketing because I think it makes a whole lot of sense to attract those folks that you really desire to work with.
Great. Thanks for sharing that. So for those of you that don't know what the Luxury Mastermind or weren't unable to attend family reunion is, James, what would you say? Jim, would you say there were 40 tables, 30?
At least, I mean, bless his heart, but Brady had to deal with the fire marshal was there, and Michelle and myself, we didn't catch the memo that you needed to sign up beforehand. So we were very fortunate to be able to get a seat at the table, but they accommodated everyone by the end. There had to be, it was very, very well attended.
Tables of 10. And so each table,
There's there's probably 30 tables anyway, right?
Yeah, each table was asked throughout the 2-hour session to one at a time to address a topic that they proposed to us. And then all 30 tables would mastermind for 5 or 10 minutes or so on a particular topic. And then everyone would come back and share. Each table would have a spokesperson and a scribe, And everyone would come back and share the one idea that they felt best answered that question. So you got essentially 30 different ideas from around the room. And then they would move to the second question and again, spend 5 or 10 minutes, and then we get 30 responses. So the 2 hours went by pretty quickly. And I think people had an opportunity to meet one another, get to know them, and then to make connections for future, as well as share some of their best practices. Did you have any other takeaways? Or Becky, Kathy, anybody else have any takeaways from the mastermind?
One idea that one of the ladies had was, she was from Colorado, in Aspen Resort luxury, obviously, area. And she went to all of the, say, maitre d's at the fine restaurants, the bartenders, the concierge people, and she encouraged them to get their licenses to be referral agents. And so that they would refer people to her. And not that and tell them, you don't have to be an agent, you don't have to be a working agent, but if you just get your license and place it, we can, and I can give you 25% commission for the referrals. So I thought that was a pretty good idea, considering our area.
Right. So our market centers could address what might be available to them as far as pre-licensure training. I don't know if they need to make a commitment as far as being a full-time agent. I don't think it's intended for people to come and get free education and then not practice the practice and be in the referral pool. But even if that were not available to them, would you be willing to subsidize someone's upfront training costs and deduct it from their first referral check? Jeff, is that something that we could offer as an individual agent to deduct it from their first closing?
Are they the principal in the transaction under that scenario?
They would be a referring agent.
Okay, but they wouldn't be they would just
Wouldn't
be.
be Yeah, they would not be a principal to the transaction.
Okay, well then, yeah, they would have to have some type of an active license
Yes.
hung with a broker. Like, for example, we have a referral company that you can put your license in for $100 a year, and you get, I think it's 80% of the referral fee paid directly to you. So yeah, it's, as long as you have a license, as long as it's active with a broker, you can certainly pay them a referral fee without any question. It's a good idea to have it in writing with a broker to broker referral or a KW referral form, just to solidify your relationship.
So we had a keynote speaker. His name is Sean Acor, and you can find him on Amazon. You can find him on YouTube. He did a TED talk about 10 years ago that had 3.5 million viewers so far. And he was a young, energetic professional who graduated from Harvard, among other higher educational institutions. He's a researcher at Harvard, and he talked about the happiness advantage. So one of the things that he said is, we think if we work harder, we believe we'll be more successful, and which will make us happier. And then reality is, when we reach a new goal, we reset what our expectation is, and we come up with a new goal, and therefore the target keeps going higher and higher. And his point of view was, acknowledge your stress and what meaning it has, and be happy where you are in the moment, recognizing that you have opportunities ahead of you, but that's not to diminish where you have the success that you've had so far. So you have a lot of potential, and look for opportunities to enhance the people around you. Anybody else want to comment about Sean and his presentation and what it meant to you? You talked about saying three things that talk about 3 things you're grateful for every day.
Or send a text message to 3 people that are in your database or you haven't spoken with for a long time. If you send a text message every day to them, three text messages a day, doesn't take long, but it really is a great way to reach out and touch people.
So along that line, it would be reach out to those people who are your top influencers. If you have your tribe or your top 5 people, is what is your weekly plan to stay top of mind with them and to stay in touch? So there's a variety of things, whether it's the phone call, the email, the text message, a handwritten note, an offer to get together. Be creative, but build on your strengths. Sometimes the question is, do you go wide or do you go deep? And in this regard, you want to go deep in that connection, because those people are most likely to send you business. It's not to say you don't want to go wide and expand your reach, but if you have limited amount of time, then my point of view is, if you're driving in the car, you could listen to music, or you could call somebody and have a short conversation with someone. Again, being knowledgeable about the local market and what's happening in the real estate market is essential. So when the consumer, Bob Lucido said this years ago, and I may have said it on our last call, the consumer who's hiring you to, or the seller who's hiring you to list their home, especially in the luxury market, they have their influencers or their friends. And what they don't want to do is have one of their friends question who you hired as a seller. You hired who? I never heard of them before. So you need to convince the seller that you are the professional and that you have the market knowledge. And that's not one of those things, sort of which comes first, the chicken or the egg. In this case, you need to have the market knowledge ahead of time, so that when someone stops you, whether it's at church or the grocery store or in a restaurant, and asks you something, that you're aware of what's happening in the local marketplace. I'm scanning my notes for a moment. One of the agents talked about providing gifts, surprise and delight, as the program is known. Some of the people do community service projects like a canned food drive. I'm not sure in the luxury market that is going to resonate with someone, for them to drop off canned goods at the office. They're usually a bit busier. So when you're thinking about luxury, is how do you make a contribution perhaps to their favorite charity? How do you identify who their favorite charity is, or alumni association, or fraternity, or professional association? How do you find out their interests and then key in on that? So whether it's a gift, or whether it's a contribution, or simply something that you mentioned in conversation. Does anybody have any experience with that? Michael, do you have any thoughts on how do you engage your high net worth individuals? Or Kathy?
Well, I'm involved with a book club that all of my clients, when they move to Marco, they typically don't know anyone. So Dina was my client and now a realtor, and she brought her into the book club as well. But that's all of most of them are very wealthy, and they have a great time. We have those pretty much monthly, and then we have in the summer, we have a summer group where we go to the movies, go to happy hour, so I consistently engage my high-end people, and by inviting them and joining with all the other ladies on the island.
Excellent. How long have you been doing that?
Since I started 12 years ago, and we had, Dina, what did we have at the book club the other night? 25, 30 women, I think.
Right.
And it's a mix, like Dina's brought in her clients, and Becky is also part of it, and she's brought in her clients. And I mean, I think there's 50, 60 that belong, but at any point in time, there'll be 20 or 30 that show up at a particular evening event.
Right. We just have a great time together. And so they're always, we're always on their mind. If they think about real estate, they're thinking about one of us.
Right. So let's go ahead. Anybody else?
No, I think, again, it depends on where your market is and what you're doing. I find a lot of success because I spend a lot of time on the water, introducing the new buyers, especially to, how to navigate the waters and different things like that. And not all, but some of them that like boating. I mean, some of them, obviously, if they're boating, they're fishing. I just had from one of my good clients, just had somebody text me and say, hey, can you give me some waypoints offshore? And although they're not always maybe up to date and current, but something like that, it gives them places to go. So, it's different ways to contribute.
So Michael, I'll use you as an example if you stay with us for a moment. How do you keep abreast of what's happening in waterfront properties?
It's great. How do I keep abreast? Well, I actually study it, for example, it's something I get up and do on a regular basis. I look at the waterfront property values in different areas. I mean, obviously, where the luxury would start with Port of the Islands, and then I'll go to Marco, and then I'll go up to, Gordon's Pass, and I'll just keep going up through. So as I talk to clients and I find out what is important to them, what amenities they want to be around, and then mix that in with budget, I can kind of at least get them started and speak their language, and go from there. That's how I kind of do it.
So over the years, I've had buyers that contacted me or agents who had referrals. And they said, I've got a buyer who has a 100-foot yacht and they want to buy a single family home on the water with Gulf access. And so I would turn to someone, if I didn't have any experience in dealing with yacht owners or waterfront properties of that scale, I would turn to someone like Michael and collaborate with someone who has that experience than to try and bluff it, because those people understand far better than we do what the intricacies of that. They need to know issues such as bridge clearance or channel depths or the beam, the length of a dock. When you've got a 100-foot yacht and the property width is 150 feet wide, even if they could dock the boat there, are they able to maneuver it to get it within the property? And secondly, is it going to block the entire view? And all they're looking at from the back of the house is the yacht. There's no view left. So understanding those things is, if they have a sailboat, they've got to have no bridges to the Gulf, and they have to have the channel depth. You don't want somebody buying something that's got 1 foot of clearance between the bottom of the channel and the bottom of the boat. So what has been your experience in learning that kind of information?
Time on the water. I mean, obviously, talking about new construction, I've had builders that were going to come to me, investors that were going to build it was water direct property, but it was not meant for the size boats that they were going to try to build these houses to match. And I basically, I would say, look, great house, great location, but you're not ready for that. Boat's not going to work there. You're going to be too dependent on the tide. So I've actually taken them out on my boat, because it's always changing, we know. And I just show them, what's going on. Some of them ask me to do reports. Obviously, I'm quite careful how I do the reports for them, saying that things change all the time, et cetera. But several investors have switched properties because of that information I gave them, things like that. Probably the quickest, illustration.
So one of the things that this conference and the recent increase in the market is, I've been selling real estate here for 26 years, is those of us that have been around for a while, we're used to different price categories or price ranges for properties. And now with the increase in property values, you have to readjust your mind. And with something that formerly was on the market for $1 million to $2 million is suddenly now $3 million. And you have to begin to think differently. You know, if someone says I've got $2 million to spend, let's say it was a beachfront condo, now suddenly they want 3 bedrooms and 3 baths, and they want to be directly on the beach, and they want a minimum of 2,000 square feet. And I'm scratching my head. I'm thinking, okay, that's about 10 years ago. Or it's, I can get you something that's 1,750 square feet under 2 million. But if you want the 2,000 square feet, it's now going to be 2,250,000 starting and up. So those of us who are more seasoned, we need to begin to really get to know what market values are in today's current market. Is anybody else running into that?
Absolutely. Absolutely, all the time.
And then, you know, the other side of that is buyers are not only looking in our area, but they're also looking in other areas. And I mentioned earlier, the speed of response becomes important. So when people are looking here, if you don't get back to them quickly, they've got other choices and other opportunities to work with other agents, and they're also looking in other areas. So one of the things that I foresee happening, and maybe some of you experience this, is that buyers are going to be looking farther north than our area. They can get more for their money in St. Petersburg or Clearwater. It's not the same as Naples and Marco Island, but if, you know, this happened back in 2004, 2005, as people would come here, we had a shortage of inventory. We had builders who were having lotteries in order to buy a new construction home. And people began to scratch their head, and they looked around here, and you spent 2 or 3 days showing them property. And then suddenly they're off to Venice or Punta Gorda or someplace else up the coast where they get newer, bigger home for less money and all the bells and whistles that they're looking for that we can no longer offer here. What I also see happening is that we don't have homes that are close to the coastline. We don't have vacant lots to build for the most part, maybe more so on Marco Island, but not probably much. And so renovations and tear downs are going to become more of the standard of practice in our area as time goes on. There's not going to be room for to build in a new project or a new development close to the beach. And therefore, buyers are going to be looking for opportunities to either tear down something or do extensive renovations. They're going to again turn to you. If I'm buying a tear down or I'm buying a house that needs to be renovated, is do you have the trade sources that do quality work? Do you somebody that you would stake your reputation on? And so I've had buyers who ask for recommendations of architects or builders, and you can't wait until the point of time when they ask it. You need to go out and develop those contacts and realize that maybe some of them are so far booked in advance that they can't do a renovation project for a year now, or they can't get the materials. So again, staying abreast of what's happening in their market, calling them. I don't advocate interruption marketing. I don't advocate simply picking up the phone and calling the contractor and saying, tell me, John or Joe or Mary, how's the market? They've got their one thing that they're trying to get done in their own business. But if you send a text message or you send an email and say, I'd like to have a conversation with you, when would be a good time for us to schedule that? I think they would appreciate it, and I think they would respect you, and I think they'll give you a better response than if you just try to push your way into their day.
I think a better approach to those people and everything you said is spot on. I agree 100% with you, is when you talk to a contractor or architect, is give them, say, hey, you know, this is what's in the area. These are the tear downs that might be a good fit. You know, do you have anybody interested? And then it gives a lead in. I do that quite often. I'm very pleased with a high level, you know, architectural company, Brand Henning, you know, in Naples, who's certified to just about go anywhere. But yep, great points.
Yeah, I think start out with coming from contribution. Don't start the conversation with, I need something from you, or I'm calling to ask you for something. Is maybe you went to family reunion and you heard a quote, or you picked up on something that you think would benefit them in their business, and say, I just thought of you. I thought maybe you'd find this of interest. I'd like to share it with you. And then you may find that there's some reciprocity there that it opens the door for you to ask questions of them about their business and what they're seeing in the marketplace. And a lot of times people love to talk. They like to be the center of attention. So it's not up to us to necessarily preach to them. I'm doing a lot of talking on this call. Any of you can raise your hand at any point, and I'm happy to give up the floor. But people like to be given the opportunity to share what their insights are. So, Dina, you asked again what the underbuilt number was. I also heard it on national television the other night. They said 4 million homes. Gary said 2.5 million homes.
Thank you. I was trying to write that number down. There was so
Yeah.
much to
The
take
good
in.
thing about this is we
Okay.
record it, so you can always go back later and listen to the recording.
All right, thank you.
Mhm.
You know, I wanted to add something to what you were just talking about builders and just, you know, being the resource. Kathy is really great at this. And as my mentor, I feel she's my mentor. And so with my customers, I don't always have all the connections. So I do look to Kathy a lot, and she always has an answer for me. But one of the classes that I went to at Family Reunion, I can't remember the agent, but she was in the Atlanta area. And she actually formed her own concierge company. So she had every vendor. She had, you know, the plumbers, the electricians, whatever. And she actually is the company. So she's getting money from the job, but also she's providing that benefit to her customers, her clients. And she knows that the people that they're using are going to do the job, and they're going to do it right because they're her people. So that's something to think about here. I've been thinking about putting a list together to give out, but she's taken it one step further.
So I have a couple of things that I would share. Thank you for bringing that up. With regard to creating the list, I think having the list is good. I think publishing the list is maybe a little counterproductive, and I'll explain why. So if they have the list, there's no reason for them to ever contact you, except maybe once a year to ask for an updated list, or they may not even forget it. It may be out of sight, out of mind. They don't need the recommendation until they have the need. But when they have, if you position yourself as the go-to person, the person who has the answers, then you want them to call you and ask, and it gives you an opportunity to ask them what else you can do for them. You get a chance to ask them what's happening in their life. You get a chance to ask them who else they might know who's thinking about buying or selling a home, versus when it's online or whether it's a printed list or something you email, there's no reason for them to ever contact you.
That's a great
When it comes to creating a concierge service, think about, there are some things that are involved in that involve liability. And what happens when the plumber spills something on the customer's white carpet, or stumbles into the cocktail table and breaks the glass top. The customer is coming back to you because you are the one that made the connection, and it's now reflected poorly on you. So be very careful about who you hire or who you recommend. Make sure that they have insurance, that they understand your expectations about your reputation, because when they do something wrong, it reflects negatively on you as well as Keller Williams. So I would have a conversation before I simply just handed out a name to somebody. But
Yeah, Mark, Broker Jeff just had a Maalox moment there, Dina.
Oh, no, I would never give out somebody that I didn't think
Very
was
careful.
highly recommended. I was just sharing that this particular agent in Atlanta, this is what she's, you know,
right.
she's been doing it for 20 years. I'm sure she is only using people that she, you know, trusts and knows their value. So
Right.
I was just putting it out there for that.
She's taking money from those people for the jobs that she recommends. I know that there are some remodeling contractors in our area that will offer you compensation for a referral. And that's a slippery slope. First of all, because you now are getting compensated for making a recommendation. And secondly, it's very difficult for you to be compensated unless you invoice them somehow, because you can't be paid a commission for something that's not real property. So a lot of these remodel contractors that will offer to pay you, a percentage of the remodel contract, you have to be very careful about that, because that really it isn't real property. It's granite countertops and sinks and things like that. And you got to be very careful, because if that ever got challenged, you'd be earning money that's not part of your license. So, I mean, I know that there's people that do it, and I know there's brokers that allow that kind of compensation to come in, but I'm concerned about it because it could cross the law. I know as an agent for a number of years, and you recommend a painter or, a contractor, and they offer to give you some money, my first reaction was, just do a great job. I don't want any money. I want the ability to have the confidence in my customer that I could have recommended you. So I'm very careful about that. I think it's a slippery slope. And the other thing that, is general good practice is to recommend more than one and let your customer make the decision, especially with attorneys and title companies and people that are providing a service that is contract related. I think you have to be careful. You can certainly put your favorite one first on your list, but I always recommend you at least give them a choice. Like I say, I think it's all done in good faith. I think it's, good in that respect. But I think, Mark pointed out some issues of liability. And I also think you could get into some situation where if you only recommend one person and they either don't work out or there's problems, that kind of could boomerang back to you. So just saying, I love the idea of building relationships by helping other people solve their problems or recommending people that can help them. But I think we as agents have to be real careful of that it doesn't put us into an area that we shouldn't be in. Does that make any sense?
Oh, absolutely. And I wasn't suggesting just, referring just anybody. And I always do try to find people. I do usually give at least two options. And I always do try to find people that have come highly recommended, that someone has used already and is happy with. And I was merely just sharing, the class that I went to. She actually started a company. So it's not like she's just referring people she knows and getting a percentage.
So her company.
She has a company. She started a company with and she has her vetted vendors.
A separate company.
It's a separate company, and she has her vetted vendors. And so when one of her clients needs someone, she gives them people from her own company. So that was, I'm sorry, I guess I misstated.
I guess I missed that, but that's like what the list. What's the
Angie's list?
Angie's list. Yeah.
How about our office? We don't have a list of preferred vendors that anyone ever made up?
We do have a list of preferred vendors. It's in the Google Drive, and I think, it's fairly easy to get, but I'll be glad to send it to you if you want.
One of the things that again, and Dina, thank you for bringing this up, because it's a good conversation point. And I see that it could work, but most of us are so busy trying to keep up with all of our existing tasks that it's a bit of a challenge. So finding a concierge service that for your clients, and especially luxury clients, whether it has to do with home repairs or whether it has to do with getting reservations or whatever it happens to be, could be a very valuable tool. One of the things that I'll caution about publishing a list of vendors is the one that was good last year may be out of business, may no longer do good work, may be so busy that they're not taking any new projects on. So another reason why you'd rather have people contact you and ask you for a recommendation and give them current information than something that might be out of date.
Our preferred vendor program is something that renews every year. And we do try to vet that list and keep their contact information current. But because you're right, you don't do it regularly, you could be recommending somebody that's, not in business or sold their company or whatever. So I agree with you.
Yeah, I mean, you could always vet them prior to giving them to your client.
And while we're on that topic, is a lot of times the conversation gets around to recommending a mover, and that industry is ripe with problems. So again, finding the best. Gary Keller once said years ago, he didn't advocate giving multiple names or 3 names. He said, your clients are coming to you and they're asking for your very best recommendation, and give them the one best one. So there are different schools of thought on it, but sometimes there isn't one best one. And sometimes it's, in some businesses, it's the lesser of evils. But making sure that whoever you recommend is properly licensed and insured, sometimes somebody said, well, I'm looking for the most affordable service. I need my carpet re-stretched. Well, that's great. So you've got this handyman guy who's a friend of a friend or a neighbor or something like that. And he's a retired guy and he does carpet stretching. And he comes to the house and all of a sudden he injures himself on the property, and he doesn't have workman's compensation for his employees or himself. So we try to do things to help our clients, but don't cut corners to the point where it makes things worse than better. We've got about 4 minutes left. Does anybody else have anything that they heard at family reunion or have questions about it? We have Mega Camp, by the way, is open for registration in Austin. I would suggest, if you're at all considering going, that you at a minimum book your hotel room now, because they will sell out in that area, and rates are quite high in Austin. You would think maybe in Austin in the summer when it's hot, it wouldn't be so much, but they are not inexpensive to be within walking distance of the Austin Convention Center. I imagine that there will be an ability to watch it virtually, and yet the benefit of attending in person is the face-to-face contact that you make with people. And then family reunion will be in February next year. There are rumors that it may be in Anaheim. It has not been, I don't know if that was officially confirmed. Did anybody hear that?
Usually they announce it at the inspirational breakfast, but they didn't do it.
I don't think, I didn't hear it. So, but I've heard from several people. So, attending in Orlando, it doesn't get any less expensive for those of us in Florida to drive to Orlando and stay in a hotel. So you want to start budgeting for yourself to go to California. Registration for this year was $9.99. With inflation, it could be higher. And I don't know what participation we may have had from agents in our market centers virtually for family reunion. I hope it was high. And for those that were not able to do that, I hope you came into the market center and took advantage of the opportunities when it was shown live within the training rooms. We have so many resources. We have so much information to share, and more of us should take advantage of those opportunities. Our next Market Center Luxury Mastermind is scheduled for Friday, March 4th. We'd like to hear feedback from you on how we could improve this and get more participation. So we're going to be probably sending out a poll to ask you if the day and the time is working. If we could find something that doesn't conflict with something else, is there a better day of the week or a better time of the day when we get the greatest amount of participation? Inevitably, there's going to always be something that's competing against us. The thought when scheduling this originally was that the Keller Williams International was doing their weekly, at that time, luxury learning series on Fridays at 1 o'clock to 1:30. Then we would have a half an hour break, and then we would continue with luxury within our local market areas. But we're open to tailoring this to meet your interests and desires, and your participation and comments are always welcome. I want to thank you for participating, and we look forward to seeing you next Friday at the same time. And if there's any other comments, please reach out.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you, Mark. Great meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you. We can stop the recording. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
Have a good day.